I'm on today with former acting ICE Director, Mr. Tom Homan. Thanks for joining me today, sir.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So the country right now is in the middle of a massive border crisis. Since the Biden administration took over, 5.5 million illegal immigrants have entered the United States. This year alone, 2.7 million, which is more than all 4 years than under the Trump administration combined. What do you make of what's happening at the border right now?
It's a critical time. It's a crisis that we've never seen before. You said it right. Under President Obama, the numbers were high, but he took some actions to slow it down. I worked with him very closely on it. And matter of fact, I got a presidential rank award. So President Obama believed in border security. Then you got President Trump, who did more than anybody. But this President Biden, we went for the most secure border in my lifetime. That's based on real data. Illegal immigration down 83%, 45-year low under President Trump. Within months, Biden took that and made it the historic immigration crisis. We've never seen numbers like this before. You're spot on the numbers, but let's not forget, since he took off, we've got 1.2 million gotaways. We don't even know who the hell they are because they crossed the border. Border Patrol has them on film or on drone traffic. They didn't arrest them because they couldn't respond because they're so tied up processing people. So we're actually, since Joe Biden's been president, we're 5 million have entered this country illegally.
And you've mentioned previously that this isn't just a humanitarian issue or an issue regarding the ability of the United States to pay for the things that we have to pay for to deal with the migrant surge, but this is actually a national security issue. Can you elaborate?
Yeah, and it is a national security issue because we talked about before, Border Patrol has arrested people from 161 different countries since Joe Biden's been president. Some of those countries are sponsors of terrorism. The Border Patrol has already arrested, my last count was 117 known or suspected terrorists that try to get into this country. So my concern is at 1.2 million. Who are they? Because after 9/11, we created all these databases that it's hard to get a plane ticket to come to the United States or hard to get a visa to come to the United States because you got to be vetted very deeply by our intelligence databases, including DoD intelligence databases. If there's any derogatory information on you, you're not getting a visa, you're not getting a plane ticket. So if you're a terrorist, you want to come here and do us harm, are you going to put yourself in a position to be vetted and found out about? Or are you going to go to Mexico and cross the border like 1.2 million others did? There's a reason why 1.2 million people crossed the border, decided not to turn themselves in to get asylum, not to be released, not to be flown to the city of their choice at government expense. Why wouldn't they take advantage of something like that? Because they don't want to be fingerprinted. They don't want to be identified. They don't want to be vetted. So the whole thing, the migrant deaths, 1,700 migrant deaths, over 100,000 American deaths from drugs that come across that border. But one of my main concerns, this is a huge national security issue because we don't know how many of that 1.2 came here to do us harm. And someday we're going to find out. It's going to be a bad day for America.
And to piggyback on what you just said, I mean, there was a new report that just came out from Judicial Watch showing that Al-Qaeda is planning plane attacks using new tactics and techniques as U.S. air marshals keep getting sent to the border. So it looks like there might be a real threat that we haven't seen since the attacks on the World Trade Center in 2001 because of these open border policies.
Yeah, what they did is they got one national security issue on the southern border. And rather than addressing that, they create two national security issues by taking air marshals off planes. Look, our air marshals can't do anything on the southern border. They don't have immigration authority. The only thing they can do is, maybe drive people from one installation to another one, or, pack lunches, or, make baby formula, whatever. But the sad thing is, it doesn't take more resources on the southern border. It doesn't take more money. This is a policy issue. If they will simply turn on the Trump policies or remain in Mexico and actually treat Title 42 like they're supposed to. Title 42 under the Trump administration, we sent over 90% of people back. The Biden administration, even though using Title 42, they're lying to the American people because they've actually released more people in the U.S. than they return on Title 42. So if they would simply embrace the Trump policies, it's just a matter of policies. They can secure this border. However, I said it today, President Biden needs to love this country more than he hates President Trump. Because if he did, he put some of these policies back in place.
So do you think that's what it is? That it's some sort of a scorn for what happened during the previous 4 years?
Absolutely. That's, look, he signed 90 executive orders in a month, abolishing everything the Trump administration did to secure the border. Yeah, I absolutely believe that these open borders progressives who've taken control of the Democrat Party hate President Trump. That's why he has been president for 2 years and they still attack him every day. But no, I think a lot of it has to do anything that's Trump is no, get rid of it, even though it made sense. And the only ones they've kept are the ones that court ordered to keep. So this look, the data is clear. I said it today. People say, well, Biden administration wants to blame Trump for broken immigration system. No, the data is clear. Look at the data the last year of Trump, and look at the data the first year of Biden. Complete 180 turnaround, the most secure border to historical immigration under Biden's watch. This isn't Trump's problem. This is Biden's problem because he did away with all the policies we created. Now, you got to understand, under the Trump administration, he had guys like me that spent 35 years doing this job. He had guys, across the board who spent their careers doing the job. So we had, he went to the experts and said, what do we need to do? We told him his breaks, did what we've been asking for decades. And he did it. The Biden administration brings all these immigration open border advocates in. For instance, let me give you an example. ICE, Immigration Customs Enforcement Agency I used to run. They came out with a policy on who they can and can't arrest. That wasn't a career law enforcement officer who wrote that document. That wasn't somebody that knew or had vast experience at this. The person that wrote that was an immigration activist out of Miami, Florida. Her name is Esther Oliveira. I know her, a very nice lady. But she wrote, an immigration activist from Miami, Florida, wrote the instructions on what federal law enforcement officers can and can't do. And the reason I know that is because they sent the memo out. The White House is too stupid to clean the metadata. So when I got a memo, I went into metadata, and there she is all over the site. So the difference between Trump and Biden is Trump counted on career folks who've done this job for decades to help shape policy. And what Biden did is bring in the open border advocates, and they're at the White House, they're at the Department of Homeland Security, and they're at ICE. There's a political appointee at ICE, never been an officer, never been an ICE employee, who decides what detention facilities get shut down. And they shut down a lot of detention facilities because she says we don't need it. Well, in the middle of historic crisis, you need more detention facilities. Under President Trump, even under Obama, President Obama, we had a family surge under Obama, FY 14-15. President Obama. So to address it, he let us build family centers. He let us build more detention facilities to hold people, made them see a judge. As I said, 90% lose their case. We put an airplane, sent them home. And guess what? The border numbers went down. Joe Biden was vice president then. Alejandro Mayorkas was deputy secretary. What are they doing now? They're getting rid of detention. They're releasing people without a court date, so not seeing a judge. And even if they get removed, they said, you can't arrest and remove them until they're only here illegally. They're doing the complete opposite of what they knew worked in 14 and 15.
And it seems like Congress isn't really serious about border security or immigration reform, because ultimately, this is an issue that Congress should be dealing with. Why do you suspect it is that despite who controls Congress, whether they have both chambers and the White House, whether it's Democrats or Republicans, nothing ever seems to get done?
Look, I agree 100%. I think the Democrats want amnesty. The Republicans want border security. At least they say that. But look, I got really upset over the omnibus bill that just passed. You had 18 Republican senators vote for a bill that gave $0 to border security. Zero. But they gave billions to Ukraine. Now, I understand Ukraine. It's terrible what's going on there. But I swear to God, the southern border is more of an immediate national security concern than Ukraine's. I got no problem giving Ukraine money, but don't ignore our own border and our own national security problem down there with 117 non-suspect terrorists already arrested. So I called them out. I says, and I don't want to see another one of them down there on the southern border having a dog and pony show saying what a terrible thing the border is and needs to be fixed, but go back to Capitol Hill and vote against border security. I'm done with it. So I started calling them out the last week. It's they got to understand, like you and I have talked about before, this isn't just an immigration issue anymore. We got over 100,000 Americans dead. We got 1,700 migrants dead. We got no inspected terrorists crossing the border. At what point, we had record numbers of women and children being sex trafficked into the United States and forced into prostitution. When is enough enough? Where they put politics aside and say, let's secure the border and save lives. It shouldn't be a political question. So I'm with you. Congress isn't quick to do it. Matter of fact, right now, with all the infighting you see on the Hill right now, I think a lot of the infighting from the real conservative part of the House is pushing back on the Speaker because he isn't promising a tough border security bill from the beginning. He hasn't committed to impeaching Alejandro Mayorkas in the beginning. I think if he'd offered that, he'd win some of those votes over. So, let's see what happens. But I'm unhappy with both sides right now.
President Biden just gave a speech today regarding the border, and it seems like just sort of scrolling through the transcript that he didn't really offer much of any substance. What's your take on what the president said?
He didn't know what he was talking about. I watched it. He was confusing terminology. So he clearly doesn't have a handle on the technical parts of it. But I can tell you what he's offering to do. He's going to open a parole policy to Cuba, Nicaragua, Venezuela, and Haiti, and bring 30,000 a month legally, which you can't do. I mean, he says he's going to create this parole policy, bringing 30,000 people in. The parole policy in statute is clear. You can parole somebody in on a case-by-case basis based on an urgent humanitarian concern or a significant public benefit. I was an ICE leader for years. I think I paroled 4 people in 15 years. And then they came in as witnesses for the government against drug cartel. We paroled them in after they got done testifying. Some got to stay because the testimony was so powerful. And we put them on a short-term 5-year visa because it was a significant public benefit, public safety. 4. He just said today he's going to do 30,000 a month. Now, the law is clear. Case-by-case analysis for urgent, significant public benefit. He's breaking the rules. So there's lawsuits pending right now. As a matter of fact, there's a trial next week in Florida, which I'm a part of, where we're suing him for violating the parole statute. So hopefully we'll get a good decision in the next couple of weeks. So it's going to stop this dead tracks. And the reason he's doing this, because he knows they don't qualify for asylum. He knows they're going to lose their case. And why do I say that? Because Syracuse University, TRAC, T-R-A-C, the Transnational Reporting Center, they gather raw data from ICE and CBP, and they make all these assumptions based on raw data. Believe me, they're no fan of immigration enforcement. I've dealt with them for years. They just came out with the results of their study. They followed all these family groups coming across, following through the court process. About half didn't show up, and half that did show up. 93% lost their case. So that backs up what I've been saying for years. 9 out of 10 of these people don't qualify for asylum. Now that finding just came out last week. So what's the administration all of a sudden came up with? Well, we're going to parole them. We're going to size the whole asylum process and parole them. It's sickening what's going on. And I appreciate you having me on the show because we need to get the truth out to American people because they're not experts. I've done this 35 years. So that's why I'm out there trying to explain to people what he said. What does it really mean? So I just told you what it really means. He sidestepped in a legal process to create a process that's illegal, and he will lose in court. But as you know, it would take courts months to come up with a decision, and by that time, you got another million people in.
Exactly. And I think part of the reason that we're so divided on this topic and many others is there seems to be an information asymmetry in terms of the people who receive certain information in this country, obviously, and the people who don't. That's created this divide that we have right now. And I see it online quite a bit. I see it with some relationships I have with friends and family, et cetera. Having said that, I do want to run a couple things by you. So occasionally when I speak with people, I throw it out there to people who follow me and say, hey, do you have any questions that you would like answered by this person? I have 2 questions for you from followers. It may be pretty easy for you to answer, just given your previous role as ICE director. But the first one is, do you believe there should be some changes to the family separation policies of the Trump administration? And if not, then why?
The family separation under Trump could have been done better. There was mistakes made. However, you can't have a different set of rules for illegal aliens and U.S. citizens. I was a cop in New York. I separated a lot of U.S. citizen families. And when I arrested a father for domestic violence, I separated him from his family. When I was law enforcement across this country, When I was a cop, I stopped father DUI, had his child in back car. He had custody of the kids at the time. He went to jail. It was his third DUI, felony. He went to jail. Kids went to CPS. Mother couldn't be found. It's sad. It's one of the saddest things you do as law enforcement officer. But law enforcement in this country separates families hundreds of times a day, every day. You can't have a different set of rules. What happened? This was zero tolerance. Was about family separation. To save the 31% of women being sexually assaulted, to save migrants dying entering this country, to save lives, we said, well, let's threaten prosecution of those that come across the border, and threaten to prosecute them. We'll put them in jail for violating the law, which is a crime to enter the United States illegally. And maybe that will slow down. Maybe we save some lives. And that happened. However, if they have a child with them, child can't go to jail with the parent. So they're separated, as sad as it is. And so the problem with what happened was different government agencies were different. People who took care of the children were different agencies than people that took care of the adults. And U.S. Marshals, you had U.S. Marshals involved, you had ICE involved, you had HHS involved, and they didn't sync. So sometimes the reunification was messed up. But don't believe the hype that there's all these children and they can't find their parents. A lot of the parents, when they left, the parents left first and they said, do you want to take your child with you? You're the adult. You can withdraw the child's asylum claim. He can go with you. They said, no, my whole purpose of bringing my child here is because I got a wife here. I want you to release him to the wife and I'm going to go back home. That was the whole purpose, get the child here. They even signed on a legal form saying I want to leave and my child can stay here and pursue with my relatives. That was some of it. Now, the Biden administration said, well, we found a lot of these parents now, we're going to reunite them. Well, they found a lot of these parents because they're offering visas and work authorization. They're giving them, can you come to the United States, we'll get you a job. Of course, you make those types of offers, someone's going to take advantage of it. That's the side you don't hear about. But yes, it could have been done better. But it wasn't to punish people. It wasn't the end result was not let's just separate families and hurt them and tear families apart. No, it was about saving lives. And in the 30 days that was ongoing, border crossings across the southwest border dropped 36%. How many lives did we save when it dropped 36%? So yes, it could have been done better. But understand this: you don't hear about this. There's still families being separated today under this administration. Now that this volume on the Trump administration was happening today still. If they perceive the parents is a safety threat, if the parent has some sort of conviction for domestic violence, if the parent, they don't think the parent's the parent, they don't think the relative's a relative. A lot of these children are subjects to trafficking. When I was ICE Director, we did a lot of investigations. Some of these children are rented to single males and single females to come to the border, claim to be a family unit, so they'd be released. The child sent back to Mexico, re-rented by a different family. And God help us, what kind of abuse are these children? Look, this administration's released over 250,000 children to this country since Biden's been president. The U.S. government today can't find 42% of them.
Wow.
So, it's a problem.
And then the final follower question here. How can you explain the 38% increase in arrests during your first 6 months in your position compared to the previous director? Was that in any way to prove a point that you were put in the position to be a more aggressive enforcer?
I believe I took an oath to enforce immigration law. That's what we did. And let me explain why. My first statement, I was an ICE director, I made a statement during credential testimony. If you're in the country illegally, you should be looking over your shoulder. A lot of people say, oh, wow, he's trying to threaten the immigrant community. No, I'm not. Look, I don't go 100 miles an hour down the road because I'm afraid I'm going to get a speeding ticket. I don't lie on my taxes. I'm afraid I'm going to get audited and go to prison. It's not okay to enter this country illegally. So the message I was sending, just because you happen to get here illegally and got by the border patrol, you shouldn't feel comfortable about that. You shouldn't say, okay, I'm good. I got no issues. No, you need to be worried. You entered this country in violation of federal law. You're here illegally. You need to be worried about it. And our arrests went up because the workforce, I allowed them to go enforce the law. But here's what people may say, you increased arrests. Yeah, I did. But look at who we increased arrests on. When I was there, 91% of everybody we arrested was a criminal alien, which means they had a criminal conviction or they were pending criminal charges when we found them, because we found them in a county jail. We found them in a county jail, chances are they're not a choir boy. They were arrested for some reason. So yeah, we increased the percentage, we increased the number of arrests, but we created the increase was mostly criminals, vast majority of criminals. We did the job. Like, and I said many times when I testify in front of Congress, I get beat up. So, well, you're arresting a lot of people. Well, I'm enforcing laws you enacted. I had one Congresswoman, Walshman Schultz out of Florida, called me a bigot during official testimony. And I was insulted. I'm saying, wait a minute. If I'm a bigot for enforcing immigration law, what's that make you? You wrote the law. I'm not making this up. I'm enforcing laws Congress enacted. So yeah, Trump picked me. I already had 30 years enforcing immigration law. I gave him the job, but I told the men and women of ICE, enforce the law. We did it under Obama. I mean, here's what people don't want to accept. In 2012, under President Obama, ICE arrested and removed 409,000 people. A record to this day. A record. But they want to talk to Trump. Deport more people. No, Trump deported about half those people. So, every administration does things differently. But no, I'm proud of the service I did. As I said to a couple of congressmen that were yelling at me during testimony, I spent 34 years saving lives. I think by securing the border, you save lives. I think President Trump proved that. When 83% less people are coming, less people are dying. It's like if you take 83% of the cars off the highway, would you have less highway deaths? Of course you would. It's just math.
Awesome. Thanks so much for joining me, Tom Homan.